Let's go! Yeah!
Welcome to the Art Behind the Iron Curtain, a podcast where we take you on a journey through the hidden world of art and culture in the Soviet Union and Eastern Bloc countries. In a time when creativity was often shaped by strict rules, political pressure, and constant surveillance, artists found subtle way to express themselves, sometimes in the most unexpected and beautiful forms. Join us as we explore the stories behind the art and defied the system, the artists who pushed boundaries, and the incredible works that emerged in a world of constraints. Whether it's a painting, music, theater, or literature, we'll uncover how these artists captured the spirit of a time that was both oppressive and oddly inspiring. In today's episode, we'll dive into fashion, an unexpected yet powerful form of personal expression and protest during the Soviet era. So grab a cup of tea, get cozy, and let's step into a world of creativity and resistance that thrived quietly in the shadow of Iron Curtain. Let's start with fashion under shortages. In the Soviet Union, style and trends were largely shaped by a lack of resources with access to fabric, clothing, and Western styles, tightly controlled by the state. Despite shortages, Soviet citizens, particularly young people, found creative ways to piece together looks that conveyed individuality and defiance. Some turned to DIY fashion, using scrap fabric, recycled materials, or even old uniforms to create unique pieces. Sewing machines became household essentials, and people learned to transform whatever they had into something new and stylish. This wasn't just resourcefulness, it was a statement. In a society where conformity was often expected, fashion allowed people to signal their personality, identity, and even subtle resistance. I often remember the stories my grandfather told me about his childhood and the tough times they went through. He would talk about how his mother, my great grandmother, would sew burki from rabbit skins. As a little boy, my grandfather would take them to the market early in the morning, selling them just to make enough money for food. There was a kind of sadness and strength in his voice when he told the stories, as if they still felt the weight of those hard days. You could feel how much it meant to him, the way they had to work so hard just to survive. One of the most iconic and controversial items of clothing of this era was denim, particularly blue jeans. They weren't just pants, they became a symbol of American influence and Western rebellion. To Soviet authorities, blue jeans represented a form of a capitalist propaganda, something that clashed with ideals of Soviet life. Jeans were so strongly associated with American pop culture and rebellion that the Soviet government went so far as to ban them, or at least make them nearly impossible to find. Young people caught wearing jeans were often met with disapproval or even face punishment. Yet the allure of jeans was powerful, and many Soviets sought them out in the black market. where a single pair could cost a small fortune. One of the most interesting stories comes from 1970s and 1980s, when jeans were not just a fashion statement, but a coveted commodity often associated with the ideal of freedom and the allure of the West. At that time, the Soviet Union had a strict policy of a cultural isolation, and Western goods were generally difficult to obtain. Blue jeans, especially American brands like Levi's, became so rare and desirable that they were considered a luxury item. Those fortunate enough to have a pair were often seen as having access to something foreign, exotic, and capitalist. But how did people manage to get their hands on these exclusive jeans? One story revolves around the jeans mafia, a group of traders who became famous in black market for smuggling in denim clothing from the West. These traders would often find creative way to get jeans into the country, sometimes relying on tourists or diplomats to bring them in for using their connections to smuggle the garments through unofficial channels. Once in cities like Leningrad, Kiev, or Tashkent, jeans would be sold for exorbitant prices, far more than the average Soviet citizen could afford, sometimes even the equivalent of several months' salary. But the allure of jeans was so strong that many people were willing to pay the price. The jeans weren't just about fashion, they represented a connection to a world beyond the Iron Curtain. Young Soviets who managed to acquire them often became the envy of their peers. Wearing jeans in public, especially in major cities like Kiev, Tashkent, or Baku, became bold statement of defiance against the government's cultural restrictions. In some cases, people would trade jeans for other valuable items, such as rare Western books, vinyl records, or even foreign currency. The underground market became so prominent that it inspired whole subcultures, such as the stilagi, a term for young people who embraced Western fashion and music. The stilagi were often seen as rebels, embracing the flashy, colorful clothing and jazz music that were banned or discouraged in Soviet society. For many young people, owning a pair of jeans meant more than just having a piece of clothing. It was a sign of individualism and a subtle way of pushing back against the oppressive state. The longing for freedom expressed through jeans was one of the small, everyday acts of resistance that characterized the lived experiences of many in the Soviet Union. The jeans phenomenon even caught the attention of the authorities. The government tried to suppress this Western influence, viewing it as a potential source of discontent. In fact, in some instances, the authorities went so far as to confiscate jeans from travelers at the border, especially from those who were returning from abroad. Ultimately, when the Soviet Union began to collapse in the late 1980s, jeans became more widely available, symbolizing the collapse of old barriers between East and West. But for those who lived through the years when jeans were ultimate foreign commodity, they would always remember the thrill of owning something so forbidden and the quiet, rebellious joy it brought. The way Soviets sought out and wore banned items like jeans spoke volumes about the power of art and culture, even in the smallest aspects of daily life. Fashion, under such strict controls, became more than just a way to dress. It was a form of self expression, a subtle form of rebellion, and a link to the world beyond the Iron Curtain. Thanks to everyone for joining us on Art Behind the Iron Curtain. We'll be back soon with more stories of how creativity found ways to flourish under Soviet rule. Slay!